So, I've been a fan of this dude since 1990, man.
It goes way back.
I always envisioned this vocalist as someone just a little bit larger than life.
Yep.
And,
Indeed.
you know, one of those dudes where, you know, when you're fronting one of the most brutal bands of all time, right? So
influential too,
but
I might add.
The thing
Thank
that
you.
I would think about, like, as a teenager, is like someone who's doing this. What do they do when they're not doing that? Like, you know, is you just get that vision, like he's at home picking the flesh from his teeth and you know,
Like a character in the movie or something.
gnawing on the bones of his enemies, you know. And,
Yeah.
But, so, Mr. Frank Mullen, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Doing excellent.
Awesome. How's life out east?
It's good. I mean, you know, I grew up out here, so grew up in Long Island, New York, my whole life. So, you know, got a lot of friends, a lot of family here still. So you know, it's a good place to live. I mean, a little expensive and stuff, but you know, other than that, yeah, I can't complain. This is where everything all started. So
Right. So you're born and raised there. So
well, not born. I wasn't
Where
born.
were you
here.
born?
So I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. I was adopted when I was a baby.
Ah,
So not a lot of people know that. So
we're already digging into the layers here.
Yeah, we're getting right into it.
digging into it. So yeah, so I mean, I was adopted when I was a baby, Jacksonville, Florida. My mom and dad that raised me, you know, based on my parents or whatever. They told me, you know, the story, but I'd already kind of known around like 10 or 11 because I looked nothing like my brothers and sisters. Like I was a skinny kid, and they were all like, you know, they were a little heavier. And I had this platinum white hair, and they all had black hair. And I was like, what?
What's your family dynamic? How many siblings?
So I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Okay, full family.
So, yep.
And how long were you actually in Jacksonville, bro? Like, was it just a quick thing?
I believe it was like a day, maybe a day and a half.
Oh, you were a short timer, bro.
Yeah. So what happened was, like, the adoption was already in place.
Sure.
So as soon as my mom had me, you know, like within the next day or two or something like that, my parents came down, picked me up, and flew me home at that point. And then just, I'd say maybe about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I actually met my real mom, biological mom, through Ancestry.com.
Really?
That must have been wow.
How was that?
It was pretty intense. It was pretty crazy because I had done it. Like my mom had done it. She was looking for somebody, and then you know, I just did it on a whim. I was like, all right, well, you know, like because I tried other avenues, you know, for a while, and you know, they just don't pan out. So I said, all right, you know, I'll give it a shot. I'll put it on. So a first cousin popped up like almost immediately, and I was like, wait a minute, first cousin, like that's either a brother or sister, you know, to my parent, you know, like to my mom.
Close target.
So
You're right.
yeah, so then I sent her a message, and I didn't get a response, and then I sent it again, and I was like, we're pretty much like, you know, your mom or your father or whatever has to know, because I knew my mom's name. My mom's name was Sandy Underwood, so I already had the name. And when I said that, she said, "Oh my God, you know, I didn't see that." So then she replied to me and said, you know, yeah, you know, my Aunt Mary is sisters with Sandy, and so we had the back and forth, and then I flew out. They were living in Chicago at the time. My mom was going to school down in Florida. So that's what happened while I was down in Florida. That's how I was born in Florida. But they were originally from Chicago. So I went, met the family. Everybody's great. The unfortunate part of this is that when I met my mom, by the time I met her, she was already the onsets of dementia.
Oh.
So
That's tough. Wow.
Yeah, so she didn't remember, or she didn't know. She's like, I can't believe I have a son, you know, and like, so but I still talk to my Aunt Mary and everything, and the rest of the family. We get together. They were just out here last summer visiting, so so even though, and then she passed away. I believe it was like 2 years ago
Mm.
from the dementia and everything. But the crazy thing too was, so she was a professional golf instructor,
Really?
and yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So she
She's
trained
a
like,
female Tiger Woods, basically.
yeah, yeah. Like she trained Mike Ditka's wife and stuff like that.
Well,
And
that's
so she was
cool.
all over the
Wow.
circuits.
Wow,
And the
man.
crazy thing was, I could always hit a golf ball at the driving range with no, like, I don't have any training.
Right.
So that's all genetics, man. I
Yeah,
could have
for
been a
sure.
professional golf player, I guess, if I grew up in Florida. And then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh, how things would be different. So what was Frank like as a kid?
So another thing that basically I was different from my brothers and sisters was, my mom said I was an extremely clean kid. Even if I ate ice cream, anything like, she said you were clean. You didn't, the other kids were a mess. They, um, as a kid, I mean, I loved all the stuff, playing outside. I had a lot of friends. We used to go after school and stuff. We'd play street hockey, like all the time, riding.
I've never been out to Long Island, and I
Yep.
think like my vision of what it is compared to what it is probably not the same. So you have your open spaces there? I'm assuming, like, it's not like
Yeah, so
New York.
basically with Long Island, you got the city, New York City, then it's Queens is right next to New York City, and then you got then it goes out to the island. So Queens is part of Long Island, and then you have Nassau County and Suffolk County. I live out in Suffolk County, and the crazy thing with Long Island is, so you start in the city, and then by the time you get to the end of the island, it's like farms, vineyards. Like it's a crazy dynamic.
Sounds like a beautiful area.
So
though,
you were more in the not necessarily rural but open areas as a kid. Yes.
Right, yeah, like we were more, like suburban or whatever,
Right.
like you have big yards and stuff. The houses aren't on top of each other. And the great thing about Long Island too is, you pretty much have a beach on either side of you.
Right. That's cool. So when did you first start getting interested in music? Not necessarily getting into your first band, but kind of leading up to that. What led up to that?
I mean, I was always into music, so like, back then, um, I'm about, let's see, 85, 84. I'm 14 years old, going to school. The big, battle back then was, who's better, Van Halen or Ozzy?
Kicking it old school.
Yeah, yeah, that was like the big thing. No, Van Halen's better than Ozzy. I loved Ozzy. So, I mean, I liked Van Halen as well, but I was definitely more Ozzy and stuff. So,
It's darker.
yeah,
Oh, that's
and
for sure.
plus,
Yeah.
I mean, he just looked evil, and
Right.
like, I mean, it's Ozzy, Black Sabbath.
Yep.
So basically, then then I started progressing into more heavier stuff I was looking for. So I remember the first time I got into Iron Maiden, I loved it. I mean, the artwork on the albums, the strong song structure, and everything. I mean, it was amazing. So
For
like,
sure. I think they were definitely one of those bands. Yeah.
yeah, that's really what pushed me. Now, okay, like this is what I'm like, and this is the direction I want to go. So it wasn't until like later, I was probably about 16. I started playing like guitar. So I, played guitar for a couple of years, and I did some like, then got into like cover bands,
Mhm.
like we would do like Slayer tunes, Exodus tunes. I was playing bass because they already had a guitar player. So the name of that first band was Tormentor, and we also had some original songs that Terrence was in this band as well, and we had some original songs called Rye Bread, and Keebler Elf Magic.
Those are unique titles,
you're-
man. Wow. Going
you're-
all out.
You're probably what, junior in high school?
I was no, I was probably at that point I was like 11, like 10th grade.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Somewhere around there, 10th, 11th grade. More 11th grade than and
Sure.
that's so then I started getting involved in that, and then at one point, that band was done, so everybody's in different bands at that point. We're just hanging out, and I remember a couple of the guys. There was a guy that, not Terrence, but there was I believe it was Josh, and there might have been another guy. So they just started messing around with stuff in the garage or whatever, just jamming. And I said, I'll try singing, man, so I tried it. I couldn't talk for like 2 days after, but I loved it. And then that was it. I was hooked, and I just started carving my niche out on, what I wanted to sound like. I mean, back then too, those were when all the real bands were coming out that I was really into, which was, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, Obituary, Carcass, Pestilence, and I kind of like wanted my voice. I was modeling it sort of like between Chris Barnes and Barney from Napalm Death.
Sure.
It's good influences.
Yeah. So
you had a lot of influences too that were not death metal, correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, I listen to every kind of music under the sun. I mean, I'll listen to 70s hard rock is great, blues, some jazz stuff. The only thing I don't really get into is country music. I just can't. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it.
I especially don't like the newer country music. And what's crazy is that when Chad here was telling me, hey, Frank Mullen's coming on the show, and I did some more research on you outside what I already knew, I saw like you had different musical influences and stuff like that. And that's always really cool. But yeah, man, this new country music, I like Johnny Cash and shit like that. But this newer country music, like I just can't get into it. Like there's no story being told. There's no substance behind it, where like the old stuff, like at least there was some sort of substance behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you got Jerry Reed, who eastbound and down and trucking, Smoking and Bandit, man. Like
I'm gonna completely disagree with you guys.
You're gonna completely disagree with us.
100%.
Okay.
Oh man, all right.
So
we're gonna have a debate on air.
I grew up on country. Like my parents were like, if it like the most they got into anything was like fringe was Elvis Presley, right? So
okay, yeah.
But like grew up on all the old outlaw country, and like I totally fell away from country. I mean, I still listen to Waylon and like a lot of the old stuff, and then in the last 4 or 5 years, I've just found like a lot of the Appalachian storytelling country is really getting popular, and there is so much talent that there's a lot of stuff out there. Coulter Wall, and I mean, there's just a lot of guys that they're old souls, and I think that's you have to almost be that to be good at country. You have to have that old rebel mindset, but
right.
I digress.
We're gonna have a debate on air for a second there.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, they're talented and stuff.
It's an appeal thing for sure. It's not for everybody. And I think, where I'm at with a lot of that is real similar. I think there's very few genres of music that have that underground and that real root stability. And I think death metal, probably hip hop has that community
for sure.
And then country,
hip hop. Yep.
Because outside of that, like rock and roll doesn't anymore. Pop music doesn't anymore. Like you can't, there is no club scene to go to watch any of that, or where there's like a demographic that supports that on a home level.
And even like a lot of newer death metal bands are so influenced by Frank's era of death metal. And I mean, you talk to so many newer death metal bands and they're probably influenced by a mix of Bolt Thrower, Suffocation, all those bands from that era. So just such an influential time period, just in general. And it's it's those roots that you talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, let's jump back to, like Suffo's early days. like when you guys are first rapping together, getting things rolling. I remember getting the EP when it first came out. Matt Jacobson gave
Yep.
it to me, and
Yep.
I was completely annihilated by it. Just how, I mean, it was like over the top everything, you know, and especially like vocal delivery. It was like, what the fuck, you know?
way to
You
describe
hear
it.
a lot of gutter, you know, low vocals, and that, you know, is obviously not, you know, the first record I heard with low vocals, but it was the first record that I heard that had that type of punch, you know, to where I don't
Right.
even know how to explain it. It's like leather lungs, you know, it just has so much power and articulation at the same time. And I mean, not to, you know, but regardless, you're a huge influence on the way I do things, that,
Okay.
you know, that I hold myself to a standard that I want people to hear what I'm saying, and I want them to feel power when I'm saying it. And that's just all with the Frank Mullen school of vocal delivery, you know, like it has to have
Thank you.
authority. And, you know, so question on that, like, as you were talking previously about, you know, kind of falling into your style and stuff, you know, I watched some real early Suffo live stuff, and there's some high vocals in there, and there's some. Where did you first start? Was it low initially, or did, like, how did you find your
I
groove?
mean, it was low. It was kind of low, but there was a little bit of mid range going on as well, and then it got lower and heavier as I continued to do it. When I first started, like until you really shape your
Figure it out.
voice. Like
Yeah.
I had no vocal training or anything like
Mhm.
that. I just knew to sing. I always sang from the gut, and that way you don't blow out your vocal cords. And so no, but and then I also, my main thing was at the first EP, the first demo and stuff like that. Um, I wasn't focused so much on making sure the lyrics were all pronounced. But then by the time we got into like breeding and pierced and all that, I really wanted to drive home, like, so when people hear it, they can read along. I see so many of these bands that are out there and stuff where I get the CD or whatever, and I'm trying to follow the lyrics, and and I'm like, where the hell, like what? There's
You
no way he just
right.
fit this
It's a good
all in
point, though.
here.
You know, you touched on something right there that I it's just one thing that I still do to this day. If I get something, I love to follow along, because it's
Yeah,
like vocal is like this big trifecta of, you know, the story you're telling, right? Like what you're actually saying, how you're saying it, and how you're delivering it within the scope of the music in its own. So it's always exciting, you know, the cadence on things. So I remember when I first got hooked on that was on At War with Satan with from Venom.
yes,
I got that big gatefold, and
yeah,
I read
Venom,
along to the
yeah.
lyrics, and I was just like hypnotized on, like, damn, this is, you know, not that Kronos was a poet, but it was the something about it just locked me into that, and I've always done that. And it's so funny that you mentioned that same thing, that it's got to be something with our age group, you know, where it's
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, we grew up on, where you got the albums, so you pulled it out, you had the whole thing opened up, all the lyrics were there, big vinyl collector, when I was younger and stuff, because that's mainly what it was, like it was
mhm.
either vinyl, then cassette, obviously cassette, and I don't think there's any death metal band that's on 8-track.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I
Yeah,
doubt
I
it.
don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it, you know, and back then, like the mystique of everything is what, you know, when I first mentioned on here is like, you know, when you hear the first, you know, when you're 16 years old and you hear the first Suffocation EP, not knowing made everything so much more interesting. Like not knowing what these guys really look like, or what they act like, or what they, any of that stuff, you know. And then even
Right.
taking a step, I remember seeing, you know, and I'm gonna go on a short tangent here, but going and seeing back in the day, I seen Morbid Angel up at the Caboose in the cities, and, you know, seeing Dave Vincent with a stage full of smoke and whatever, and just thinking this dude's like
Yep.
10 feet tall, and You know, he's got 24-inch arms.
That's a world record height, by
And
the
then,
way.
and then, you know, when you finally meet him, you know, he's, you know, 5'8", 5'9", whatever, you know, like
Yep.
but it's just that persona of not knowing, and how that's drastically changed the absorption of music, you know, that,
Yep.
you know, you can just walk in and rub shoulders with everybody now. And it's like the mystique that we had as kids with the bands that
Yeah,
we
yeah,
first started
yeah.
listening to
Right.
was so
Right.
magical.
That
It made you
mystique was just the experience,
it
just
made-
part of the experience
Oh,
like
God.
that. That's just crazy to think that like you guys grew up in that era, and you guys were so fortunate because that doesn't exist anymore. Like I'm slightly younger than you, bro, but that just doesn't even exist anymore because of
No,
social media and
no.
stuff. So it's just I'm so happy you guys got to see that.
Well, it's
honestly.
like the you know, seeing that Thin Lizzy album cover, you know, when he's got his bass and it's all the backlights and the smoke, and you're like, I want to be that dude, man.
yeah.
Fuck working a job. I
Yeah,
want to
know.
do that.
I know.
So
Yeah, and pretty much, yeah. Like, you know, so once you saw those, yeah, you know, it was like, you know what, like, yeah, man, I want to write and play music and get on stage and put on a show, you know.
right. So okay, so Suffo gets together, you guys start writing. Was it just that technical and that gnarly right off the rip?
I mean, pretty much. So like basically the way the whole band came together was, um, because I went to a different school all the way up till 10th grade. 11th and 12th, my dad moved us over to the Stony Brook area, and that's when I went to the other school. So two of the guys that were in Suffocation were from the first school, Longwood. So it was Doug Cerrito and Mike Smith. So then I move, and that's where I run into Terrence Hobbs and Josh Barron. So, you know, now because I'm friends with both sides, you know, we all start mutually hanging out and getting to know each other. And, you know, Mike's playing drums at that point. And, you know, we start forming like different bands, like, you know, cover band type stuff. You know, some guys would play with this, some guys played in another band. And what happened was there was a band called Mortuary, and that was the beginnings of Suffocation. And
Okay.
that was basically Mike Smith, Doug Cerrito, Terrence Hobbs, Chris Basile played bass.
The guy in
So,
Pyrexia.
yes.
Yep.
And there was a kid, Billy Reyes, that we went to school with. He was the singer.
Hmm.
So a lot of those songs that are on like Effigy and stuff like that, that came from there. From that band. And then, you know, I kind of like reworked some things vocally and stuff like that, different than what Billy did, you know. So, but that's where most of the songs came from. So Terrence and Doug Cerrito were right off the bat. Those two just blended together, and that was the music they were creating. It
Dude,
was
that's just
like
so crazy
instantaneous.
because like Suffo has got to be one of those weird bands that like you look at your first record and it's not that there wasn't growth as the band went, but you started out so hot, like right on point with figuring out your own style. You know, a lot of bands will put out 1, 2, by the time you get to your sophomore record, you're finally figuring out, oh fuck, this is what we should be doing. And it was
Right.
like Suffo was out of the starting gate and just
They set a high standard like right from the get go. Like didn't even take long. Like,
No.
it just started right from the get go. Like yeah, that
Yeah,
high
I mean,
standard.
yeah, their writing style was just amazing to watch the two of them put, you know, stuff together. So that was going on the one side. So then me and Josh now got together with a drummer from school. He didn't really play death metal or anything like that, but you know, he was a good drummer and stuff. And he was like, "Yeah, you know, I'll come jam out or whatever, and we'll see what we could do." And then there was an ad in one of those like magazines back then, or the local paper thing that came around,
Mhm.
and it said, you know, two guitar players into death metal, morbid, and I was like, "Yo, we got to call these guys." So it turned out one of the guys was actually Guy Marché, you know, from uh, Pyrexia,
Mhm.
and he played with us later on. And another guy was his friend Todd German. So us five got together, and then I came up with the name Suffocation. I took it from the Morbid Angel song, Suffocation.
Sure.
And I said, yo, that's the name of the band, Suffocation. It's right to the point.
Yeah.
So we started jamming on our own, and we came up with two songs. One was called Afterlife. That didn't really go anywhere, but the other song was Catatonia.
It's crazy.
And so we were writing that stuff. We were doing our thing. The other band broke up. So Mortuary basically broke up, fell apart. So then little by little, each one of those members came over to Suffocation, and then that's where it pretty much took over. And once we had that lineup, the lineup was set.
That's awesome. I mean, it's undeniable what the chemistry, I mean, and it's really like usually you can listen to a record, especially early records, and you're like, it's really good, and then there's that weak link, and it just really wasn't there. You know what I mean? Whether your drummer's just he's 16 and he's not getting it yet,
Right.
he's
Right.
got promise, but he's not there, or even vocally, like, it's good, but doing extreme vocals, like you mentioned earlier, it's not something you just walk out and you're just like, I got it.
No, no, no. No, it definitely takes a little while, for you to get it going and be able to, keep it, like, sustain it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's one thing to be like, okay, yeah, I'll go, sing a song or two down at practice or whatever, and then, we'll see each other next time.
Right.
Once you start really going to play shows and stuff, and now you're playing an hour set, hour and a half set, or whatever. I mean, that's when it really comes into play.
Right.
What did you do to like keep your voice in shape, Frank? Because I think like not a lot of people like, and to kind of piggyback on what Chad said, not a lot of people appreciate like how much skill goes into that. Not only that, but self-care, that you have to take care of yourself if you're a vocalist more so than everybody else. I mean, let's face it, like if the vocalist is not there, the band's not there, you might as well say. So like, what did you do in that instance?
I honestly didn't do anything.
Nothing.
I mean, I could turn it on. It got to the point, especially in the early days, it got to the point where I could just turn that thing on. Like, I didn't even go warm up. A lot of times I didn't even want to do sound check. I was like, whatever, man. I'll be there when the show goes on.
That's awesome.
And we'll get it going. And so yeah, I never did anything. I never, was like, oh, I drink, honey and tea and all this stuff. And, I didn't do any of that stuff.
Just born to do it.
Yeah, I
guess you were just born to be, and but yeah, and then so later, like eventually when I retired and stuff, the main thing was it got harder to keep doing that at that level, especially playing like long tours and stuff like that. The stamina and the vocal keeping it that, my age was just catching up to it. So I went out when I could still do it instead of like trying to be up there on stage and it sounded like crap. And people were like, oh man, like halfway through the set, he lost his voice, or you couldn't hear him, or it sounded like shit. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So I got out when I did. And, and now enjoying this stuff. But, bands will hit me up and everything, you got, and then I'll, do vocals and stuff like that. They'll say, hey man, can you do this or you do that? Okay. Yeah. I'll go into the studio, bang out some vocals or whatever. And, but yeah, no warm up, no nothing.
So I do have a question for you, and I'm just curious on this
Yep.
one. Where is my copy of Legacy of Violence?
Ooh, he's calling you out. Ooh, that just
Legacy of Violence. What's that? The DVD?
The mystery DVD that I think
know.
everybody's still waiting on.
I mean, basically,
what? Give me the scoop on this deal, because I can tell you right now that for you guys it's probably like, but it's like everybody else is still like, Well, like
Well,
that would have been a
yeah,
dream.
like, and we did a lot of recording for that. Like,
Hmm.
it was basically John Bigford came down, and he was out here, and I mean, we did segments, each guy, like, so, Mike had his own segment, Terrence had his, we did all of this stuff, and then supposedly, he was going to put this thing together, and then we were going to get ready to put it out to everybody, and then, like, all the footage either got erased, stolen, I don't know, and that
That's
was
too
it.
bad. That's too bad.
Yeah, that sucks.
It's such a. I think it was
So,
such a
I mean, like,
killer era too.
online, I think, like, my portion a part of that video is out there, like, in YouTube
Like
land or
Frank the
whatever,
Tank.
um, where it's, my 10 minutes or whatever of antics and stuff, going to the gun range,
Hmm.
things like that or whatever. So I think that is, I believe, out on YouTube somewhere. But the whole thing together, I don't think I don't think anybody has anything with it all together, which was a shame. I mean, we were really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I think it was like at a great time in your timeline, too, where I don't know. It's
yeah,
too bad.
because we had never done anything like
Yeah.
that, and this was going to be the first time where actually, you were going to get to see us also in our element of just hanging out at home and
Right.
at a party at the house or whatever. So there's footage of me, with that, my friends around or whatever, and doing stuff out here, here on Long Island. So it was going to be really interesting, and I mean, it's a shame that it never came to fruition.
Yeah. Well, I'm sad, but it's
So
okay.
am
I can
I.
tell, man. It's a
I just love stuff like that. Obviously, doing this is just kind of another stem on that, but to even and I probably mentioned it already, just knowing who's behind the band that I love, like what are these people? What are they like? And what
Right,
and
right.
going more in
the
depth than the usual stuff,
the
kind of like you're talking about, like
yeah,
going more in depth than the typical traditional generic questions.
and the personalities that make it happen,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the thing too. Yeah. Yep.
because I think like the bands of the 90s, like the roots bands that started everything, the members were as kind of original and unique personality wise as the music themselves. You get
Right.
the
Well, yeah.
the Glenn Bentons
Yes.
and the
Glenn Benton.
like some real, and you're up in that too, to where it's mid song banter and things that where it's like all the way down to your chop. So speak, and
You almost got to be somewhat of a character.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
like you got this personality, this
Yeah.
so
Yep.
okay, so I'm gonna kind of jump to a couple things here first.
Mhm.
August of 95, I'm guessing, was
Okay.
roughly that time. I watched some live footage to where Frank comes out on stage, and it's the first time I've seen the head shave.
Yes.
So it's like I just known the iconic Frank Mullen is the shaved head, and every time I think about it, it's like, nah, it's actually, you held on to the locks for quite some time for
Yes.
like 95. So what happened? Did you just all
So
of a sudden one day you're just like, fuck it?
yeah. So
I
I
lost a
mean,
bet.
like, I
Must
mean,
have been a bet.
I love the look of long hair, especially when I was, a teenager and stuff in the early years of Suffocation. And, I was a maniac with my hair
Mm.
on stage. I would do windmills, and, Derek saw me live, and he's like, man, he's like, your head was spinning so fast, you look like a helicopter, like you were gonna like fire off the stage. And so I mean, I was totally into it, but then as you continue playing more and more shows and you're out, um, it got to a point where my, like, after every show, my hair is just a knot ball. And I'm getting these knots out, and in the shower and stuff. And I was like, so I did it for a while. And then basically on that tour, so that was the Pierce from Within tour.
Mhm.
And so about halfway through, maybe, Doug Bone was playing drums for us at that time.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, so and he was already like he had a shaved head and everything. So I remember we get to a hotel room or whatever after playing the show, and I was like, you know what? I am so fucking done with this hair. I said, yo, Doug, can you shave this thing? Because I already felt that I didn't have any weird dents or anything crazy in my
You gotta make
head.
sure.
Yeah.
So it was
Because if you had
visually appealing.
something,
So like,
yeah, if
oh,
I
it was
had
visually
something going
appealing.
on, I
Yeah,
would have
Like
left it.
that weird roll. you
You know,
gotta
you
make
have
sure.
this giant like other head on the back of your head,
Right.
you know, like
It's part of marketing
so
too. It's going to be visually appealing too. Yeah.
so yeah, so Doug, we go into his room or whatever, and yeah, he shaves my head, and I remember I came out and I went over to Chris Richards' room, and he looked like he was gonna cry, like he was like, "What'd you do?"
That is
And
not
like he was,
metal.
yeah. He was like, "What?" Like you know, and I was like, "Man," because I talked a little bit about it, but that night I was like, "I'm doing it."
That's all.
And I remember we were playing California the next night, so we get there. I go into the club, and like nobody recognizes me. I'm walking around, this, that, and the other thing. Nobody knows for nothing. And then I get on stage and they're all kind of like looking at me like, wait, what? And I turn around and
Get a
go,
new singer.
yeah. I said,
They
yeah.
replaced Frank.
I go, yeah, that's right. I shaved my head and I don't give a fuck. And then that was it. Ever since then, it was always shaved head. And
and it's so weird because like it is absolutely fitting of who Frank is. You know what I mean? And then I think like just your personality and your persona is fitting of that. That when I go back and I watch videos like live videos and stuff with you with long hair, I gotta like recalibrate. I'm like, what? But it, you know,
Different feel
so,
to it.
but
Different feel
that's
to it.
even though like I knew that, but it's just it's so
But
fitting for who you are, you know.
yeah, and the thing with the hair, like when I had hair, I wasn't much of a talker back then, because like I would just hide behind the hair, you know. So
Mhm.
it'd be like, you know, okay, the next song is the, you know, once I shaved it, and now like I can't hide behind anything. That's when the real personality was able to come out and get unleashed. That's where I would say crazy stage banter. I didn't care what I was saying. We'd be in Milwaukee and I'd talk about Jeffrey Dahmer on stage. Like I didn't care, you know, I would just, whatever I was gonna say, I was gonna say it, you know, basically like telling a crowd in New York, hey, try going into a Walmart at like 2 in the morning and just go to the checkout line with duct tape, plastic bags, a chainsaw, and and maybe throw in like a pack of gum or something and see if they say anything to you at the checkout line. Like, have a good evening. I sure will. I'm gonna have a great evening.
I wonder if anybody actually tried that. Can you imagine like somebody going into friggin' Walmart? They have all this stuff and it's friggin' late at night somewhere in some town, and the cashier's like, "What the fuck? What's this guy doing? Like,
Yeah.
what's
What's
going
this
on?"
guy doing at 2 in the morning with all of this stuff?
Did you actually start like a bald trend, Frank? Like with like other people like after you? Because I mean that like I can only imagine like being at the show, seeing you, not knowing that you're Frank, and then you're like, oh yeah, I am Frank, but I have no hair now. I mean, like,
Yeah.
did you start like some sort of trend or something?
Uh, I don't know if I started a trend or whatever. I think I mean, as it went on later on, there were a lot of different vocalists who would come up and say, man, like I model, my vocal style or your personality on stage. I model it after you, So, I mean, it was cool to hear that from different people out there in the industry.
So when and I couldn't find this one, and I went through 100 videos, but I couldn't find something substantial to figure out when and where the chop came from.
Yeah, okay, so the chop basically just got invented from, so the songs going on in the background, and then I just started following like the blast beat. So Mike Smith, just wailing away on it, and then I was just like, and I remember it just stuck, and next thing you know, like the fans loved it. So then like all of a sudden now they're doing it at the show, like before I even do anything, like they're up front and
Yep. Like heavy metal has Dio,
Yep.
right?
right.
And
There was the Dio thing and
death
all
metal
of
has the
that.
Frank.
And I was like, you know what? I said, I don't think I've ever seen anybody doing like a chop or because like, there's like, I guess in jazz and stuff like that, there's like, chops or whatever they'll do and stuff, but I don't think anybody had, was like thinking, all right, I'm gonna do the chop and that's what's gonna stick. And then later on, I also added, the guns in too.
Yeah.
Not to confuse all this with the knife hand in traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say because that's that's a very prominent thing nowadays. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, pisses you off, like you put your hand out the window or
Yeah. I mean, if you want, you could also, if somebody cuts you off, just put your hand out the window and start giving them the chop.
I
There you
really
go.
need to do that next time. I mean, luckily people here drive decently where I am, but when I go down to like Omaha or something like that, I might just have to use that quite a bit. Yeah,
Yes.
'cause people down there, no offense to all my friends in Omaha, but there's drive terribly
But
bit.
it is pretty fun how it has stuck. Like now, if
Yep.
you do it, everybody knows where it came from. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
that
Yep.
there is no like
Yep.
Yeah.
it's not on accident. If you're doing it because Frank did it.
Yeah.
So
Pretty much. So yeah, I guess I invented my signature move.
there you go. Better than the dance move. So,
The lawnmower, doing the
Yep.
lawnmower. And the
Yeah,
dance.
lawnmower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you kind of touched on leaving the band.
Yep.
And which was incredibly unique, the way you guys went about it. I mean, it was, I don't know that there's more of a more respectful way of handling things than the way you guys did. Terms wise, you still talk to everybody, or
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, so I still pretty much most of the people I hang out with still in the band is like Eric, Marati,
Mhm.
the drummer,
Mhm.
Derek Boyer, Terrence, obviously. Yeah, I'm still friends with all of them. And when they're home, I'll see them, because they're still out on the road. Ricky's singing for them now.
Yep.
And so I think they're just wrapping up a European tour right now.
Yeah. And I will say, like, Ricky's done a good job. He's
Yeah,
got
I think so.
big shoes to fill. And
Yep.
I think, in I guess everyone would kind of interpret things differently, but it seems like he manages it in a way to really pay homage to the role that he has, right? So knowing that it's not that he's I've seen him do the chop, and I've seen him do certain
Yes.
things that are like,
Yep.
paying homage to you in as opposed to, there's, I mean, obviously you don't have to look very far in other bands to see a singer who's
Right.
been replaced by somebody else and that shit doesn't go well.
Right.
Now there's bad
yeah,
blood,
yeah.
and now there's this and that. So
He's
I think
got a respect for what Frank built is really, I
Mhm.
think, like what you're getting at, and that's very accurate. Like especially like when I pay attention to like the YouTube videos and stuff of him and stuff, you can tell he has a respect for what Frank built over the years.
yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
to be transparent,
yeah.
like it's not the Barnes corpse grinder scenario,
Right.
Sure.
Like
Good
that
point.
that was kind of, different, and the way that all played out. Chris Barnes basically got, was replaced, and a corpse grinder and everything. Here, there was already a plan in place of me retiring at some point, and we had talked about it, and that's why for a little while there were a lot of different singers that were coming in. Bill from Decrepit Birth came in, John
Mhm.
Gallagher came in.
Who I
Uh,
thought I watched, there was not a bad. It was a weird mix, but not a bad gig. Like, Gallagher's just got a cool, unique thing he's got.
Yeah,
vocally.
he's got a unique voice as well. Yeah.
So and that was one of those things that slipped my mind. I didn't even think about it until you mentioned it. But yeah, it was a little bit of plug and
Yeah,
play
so
and,
they were trying to figure out, like, who's going to be, basically like the next singer.
Mhm.
And and then for a little while there, Kevin Muller did a lot of shows with him, with them. He's in like Alluvial now or something like that.
Okay.
So he's doing that band, I believe, full time. And then and Ricky was also, in the mix as well. Like Ricky did it for a bit, then he didn't, and then now, he's been doing it the last couple of years.
Right.
So
So when you step down, life kind of changed for you.
no, I mean, I was, prepared to step down. I mean, I listen, I miss playing shows. I miss being on stage. I'll miss that, for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
But I was okay with it. I prepared myself. It wasn't like, oh, I have to do this because of health issues or because of, this or that. I was fully aware of, like, hey, I want to start bowing out at this point now, instead of, ruining my career and stuff with bad vocal performances and stuff like that. Like, I didn't want to be like a Vince Neil,
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
heaven forbid.
and just go out there just to play and make all the money and stuff, and and sound horrible.
I actually think it shows that you have like a respect for your fan base too. That like I don't think most people like. Sometimes like bands take their fan base for granted and stuff, but just the fact that you always want to like deliver a quality product just says that you don't
Yep.
take that type of shit for granted, man. So I think that you want to buy it the best way possible. It's kind of like the equivalent of a sports athlete who just doesn't know when to quit, just can't hit the ball anymore, can't throw the punch anymore. But like the way you did it was very classy,
Yep.
tasteful,
Thank you.
and yeah, man. Like I said, it should serve as a good example, I think, to other people in your position, man.
Yeah, and it's like, basically, I looked at, look at it as like, basically football players and stuff like that. At some point the quarterback says, "Hey, man, yeah, I could still probably do it." And yeah, I could probably still go out, play, one show or something like that. But, you know, the risk of injury or the risk of something going on, with a football player, they get to a point in their career and they're like, you know what? Hey, man, I've done this too long, and it's time to bow out. So
Good, go out with good memories as opposed to
For sure.
the end struggle. So the big bonus, I think, from you in stepping down is family, right?
yeah,
Spending time. Obviously, you get a shit ton more time now with family,
yes,
and you got
yep.
relatively. When did you get married?
We got married almost 5 years ago. This year
Yeah.
will be 5 years.
Well, good.
But we've been
Congratulations.
together
Yeah,
for
big congrats.
13.
Yeah.
Been together for 13.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
So
she's a total metalhead. That's why I love her.
Hey, sweet.
Oh yeah, she actually. So I've known her for a long time, just, mutual friends and within the scene and stuff like that. She was always into metal. She's a huge King Diamond fan,
Hey,
loves
sweet.
King, Merciful Fate, all that stuff. So back when Suffocation first started playing shows, she actually came to one of the shows with one of her friends at the time, which was Bill Tolley, the drummer that passed away from internal bleeding.
yes.
So they knew each other and everything. They were friends and everything. So they came to a Suffo show, and she's like, "I'm gonna go in the pit," and he's like, "No, you're not. Like you're not. You don't want to go in there." She's like, "I went in there, and you guys hit the first chord, and I got tossed across the room." And then he's like, "I told you, like." So yeah, she's a badass, metal woman, and yeah, she's amazing. So we have an excellent marriage. I
Good.
mean,
That's
this is the
good, man.
best marriage I think anybody could have. So yeah, we respect each other, love each other, and our
Good.
family's great. My mother-in-law, father-in-law, my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, they're it's amazing. Yeah. So it's great spending a lot of time. We do a lot of stuff usually on the weekends. A lot of people over our house, just hanging out in the backyard, barbecuing, going in the pool, hanging out, drinking, whatever.
Good.
So,
Yeah, it is like for me, that I got married young. I got married when I was 22, maybe just 23. And I think
okay.
that was the hardest thing for me to why I could never fully commit to touring and leaving and doing any of that stuff is because I had a great relationship,
Yep.
and that's not only hard to come by,
Yeah.
it's next level hard to come by.
Yes, it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And I mean, like, so what, this is my second marriage, so the first marriage, obviously I was young. I
Mhm.
was like 22, I think. Same thing around you. And the band was just starting to take off. And so now I'm married, and then we were having my daughter. My daughter was on the way, and so she was born, and then now it kind of put the band in a spot where I couldn't really tour as much as I wanted to. Like, I had a job at the time and everything with the county. So what I was doing is I'd take like furlough time, I'd take comp time, like whatever time I could build to put together to do all those early tours. And then so I mean it's a hard balance,
Right.
with marriage, family, and then trying to do something that you love,
Mhm.
so, so yeah, so I mean, it lasted a couple of years, but then it fell apart. We got divorced and everything, and then about I think it was about 3 years later, no, 5 years later is when, um, no, so we were getting divorced, right? So right after we got divorced, I was living in Las Vegas at the time. I was working for the city out there. And when we got divorced, I called up the guys here in New York and I said, "Hey, man, like, do you want to try to do this thing full time? Give it another shot. Like, this time we're going to hit it hard." And Mike Smith was on board. Terrence Hobbs was on board. So I was like, you know what? I said, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. I'll put my 2 week notice in. And I drove all the way back with all my shit back to New York, Long Island, and we put the band back together.
Right. So all this happens like in your like split up. You guys were split for it was a little while.
Oh, well, yeah. So like by the time I got out here, I mean, we were like separate. Yeah, basically like I think about a year or something like that
Mhm.
before all this came together, and then I came home, and then it took us about a year to put together the music and everything that would be, the first album back, which was Solstice and I.
Right. And
Oh,
it's it crazy in that is that in itself's not an easy thing to do. Like, put the pieces back together and come back so solid, right? Coming back out of it.
Yeah,
you
I
don't know if
mean,
it's gonna have the
great.
same feel, the same
Right.
chemistry, the
Or if it's
same,
forced,
and especially since they had such a high standard, like
Mhm.
right from the get go. Like you don't know if you can keep that same standard after being away for that long.
Yeah, and the crazy thing was actually, coming back together and putting it back together, the band became that much bigger because there were so many young kids that couldn't see, they were too young to come see us in the early 90s.
Right.
So, and now, like, maybe their older brother saw it and they've been listening to it and they're like, oh, these guys are sick or whatever, I wish I could see. And now we came back out on the scene. So I remember those first couple of tours that we went out. I mean, shows were packed. We were selling merch like crazy. The kids were loving it, and yeah, we had a lot of success coming right back, which was, I was glad it happened that way.
Mhm.
It would have sucked if you came back and you weren't as successful.
Right. That kind of suck. Like, oh, let's
Yeah.
do it. And then you get out there and everyone's like, who's this? Yeah. So, what's your favorite? We'll start with like your favorite Suffo album. Like, if you got to go back and say, I'm going to listen to this one because this is it.
Well, I mean, for me, there's like two of them that are in there. So obviously, Effigy of the Forgotten, just the songs on that were so catchy. It was the first album we put out, so I love it for that. But one of my favorites is actually just the EP, the Funeral Inception.
Hmm. So what's the favorite?
Despise
Yeah.
the Sun, and everything. Uh, so that EP, yeah, I mean that EP, I love it. The songs were excellent. I mean, so
What's your favorite
you
song?
know, uh,
I
on
have
Out
one.
of Everything.
Yeah.
He's got it in his head already.
So, so there's actually two of them or whatever. So I mean, I love um I love Devoid of Truth. I like playing that. And then I actually loved playing Souls to Deny, even though we didn't play it a lot.
It's a good song. Yeah. So
So I
mine.
just like the way it flowed and
Yep.
the hooks.
Yeah. I'd
So
have to say mine is Bind, Torture, Kill.
Bind, Torture, Kill, yeah.
So good. Just like there's so many great quirky things in that song, both like even it's like everyone has their little 2 seconds and it's like it's just great. And lyrically, like articulation and like the way, like cadence wise, is you can't
Well,
listen to that and just not be like
yeah, and so like a song like that, Bind, Torture, Kill, that whole song was written by Mike Smith.
oh really?
Super cool.
Lyrics, guitar, everything.
Wow.
So a lot of times if Mike Smith did lyrics, that's how he would break it down. Because he also did, his hip hop stuff, Grim Reel,
Mm-hmm.
that you might have heard of. And so he liked the hip hop stuff too. So a lot of his patterns were kind of laid out like in that way,
Sure.
you know? So I mean, sometimes I could do it, and it was like, okay, yeah, I understand, I can feel, but sometimes he would throw things at me, and I'm like, yo, man, if I was talking it, yeah, I could do it, but I'm singing guttural death metal, man, I can't do that.
I also think Effigy was definitely probably one of the most influential albums from that era. There's even people my age that start bands that are very inspired by that, but I think Souls to Deny was sort of a sleeper in my opinion. And I think it was kind of like underappreciated. And that's actually like my second favorite behind Effigy. I actually thought that, like I said, Souls to Deny just did not get the credit it deserved in my own opinion. I thought that was very, very good. I mean, because it's tough to beat Effigy, obviously. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
influential. So, yeah, just my own 2 cents about that. But yeah,
No, yeah. So I mean, Souls to Die was a great album. I mean, pretty much, there really wasn't any album I can sit there and go. I mean, Breeding the Spawn was the only one that had a horrible production.
But the
And
music
that-
is so good.
I thought
right, the music was amazing,
Yeah.
but the production was
Production's-
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that wasn't our fault. Like we were at the time, we were going to go back down to Scott Burns, Roadrunner Records.
Mhm.
Basically, they said, no, everybody's using them. So then we tried getting, I think the guy that did the Carcass albums, Colin or
Colin
something like
Richardson,
that. Yeah, and Colin Richardson, and he, he couldn't do it for whatever reason, and so now we were stuck. We're like, what the hell do we do now? Like that was our plan. So we went back to the studio where we did the Human Waste EP.
Mm-hmm.
But now, we had more money inside, so we're like, okay, we have a bigger budget. Maybe we can make this thing work. And it did not work. We used the guy that runs the studio or whatever, and he probably had no clue what death metal is and any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, the production was horrible. We were so disappointed in the way it sounded because the songs were good. We knew we had good songs,
Mm-hmm.
but the production was just horrible. And then when that came out and Roadrunner saw how bad they were like, we're sorry, like wherever you want to go for Pierce from Within, whatever you want to do. So Pierce from Within, we actually did a studio up here in New York, but we flew Scott Burns up here.
We were talking earlier, and before, we had a session before this, and we had this exact conversation about the 90s, right? So producers, how
Yep.
when you would go and look at records and you'd be like, oh, Scott Burns did this, I'll buy it.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
or
yeah.
same with Colin Richardson, like, oh, Colin Richardson was behind the board, I'll buy it. And how that
Yeah.
is almost, with technology, how that is the lost fifth member. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't.
Oh yeah,
Big time.
well, right. You're exactly right because back then, like those guys, every album they did sounded amazing,
Mhm.
and so that's who you look to say, hey man, I want him doing our album. Nowadays, you almost don't even need it. Like a lot of these guys are doing stuff at home with their Mac Pro Tools or whatever, they're putting it in and they're recording on their own, mixing it and everything, so like a lot of that old school of having a producer come in there and the recording engine and put it all together for you and just sit in the studio. All right, you're gonna go in, we're gonna punch you in, we're gonna bring you out. And then the first recordings, obviously everything was done, cut and splice.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and I think part of the magic with being able to work with an engineer or a producer, especially someone who's got a good vision, is their job in the end is to bring out the absolute best in what you have to offer, right?
yeah,
So when they take that mix and they can say, this is what I envision this band being, and when that outside ear and that outside influence can make that thing be something like, I'm sure you had those recordings and you walked away from it,
yeah,
you're like, fuck, I never thought it could sound like that.
yeah. Well, and that was the thing, the first time going down and doing Effigy with Scott Burns, I was blown away. Like, how crazy it sounded, how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, yeah, like this is what it's all about. Like,
And that outside in, I think with a lot of bands doing everything themselves, right? So they'll because for the bands I'm in, we track everything ourselves. But
right.
I will never be involved in a mix master process for my own projects because that outside ear here's by the time I get to that point, dude, I'm just done listening to it. Like I don't want to hear the shit anymore. And to have
Yeah, 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 yeah.
those fresh ears
Yeah.
be like, no,
Yep.
this is where it can go, And I think so many bands are afraid to let go of that when back
Yep.
when we were growing up, you just didn't have any control over it.
Yeah, yeah, you didn't have the equipment to
Mm-hmm.
basically say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to mix and master it all myself. You just didn't have that, so you had to go to somebody you could trust in the recording industry and be like, look, I have the total faith that you're gonna make this album sound sick.
Right.
That's
Right.
why that era was very distinctive too, was because of that culture. And I also think like Scott, I've heard a lot of Scott stuff. So with that said, Frank, like, I mean, what did Scott do? Do you feel like to, like put you guys over the edge? Because like I said, he definitely, I mean, he had the ear for it. And I believe you have to know a band well to actually know like what they're capable of. Like, I mean, like, what did he do that like put it all together for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, he just like he would listen to what we were doing in the studio, and then like he would throw in his two cents, like maybe you should do this, add this or whatever, and he was just like he just took his time, made it sound great, made my vocals sound good, like yeah, I mean, he just worked this magic basically.
That's like when you mentioned it's like, and being a vocalist is part of it too, but like getting a mix back, like that first time you get the mix back, and
Yeah.
you're like, I didn't even know I sounded like that. Like, you know, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best part. That's like Christmas.
I was
You
just
get
going to
that-
say, it's like
Yeah,
Christmas came
exactly.
early. Yeah.
God, I sound good.
Yeah, there you go.
All the
Right,
you go
yes.
through all the raw tracks and the dry, the dry listens, and you're like, well, I don't know.
And then later on, obviously, with the albums later on, like, Souls and the self-titled album, Blood Oath,
Mm-hmm.
all that. A lot of that was recorded by Joe Cincato. He
Right.
had opened up his own studio out here. He was our sound guy, for years, doing our live sound and everything. So he did a lot of the recordings as well. And it was great working with him too. I mean, he knows what he's doing, and he just continued to grow. And now he's got, a successful studio. He's out touring with Danzig right now, doing live sound. So
It is kind of cool when like peripherally when you watch a lot of the guys that you grow up with, and all the watching careers manifest and change and grow, and this guy goes on and like you're saying with him moving on from doing club engineering to studio engineering to arena production stuff. That's pretty awesome. There's and actually that's like our engineer that we work with on a lot of our stuff, that's kind of his path too. And then he's just moved on to having such a great ear that he's one of the few. I'm glad we're with him at any rate. But so I did have one other question for you, and this is like a one of those Wikipedia true or falses.
We're going down that route.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, we're going down that route.
It's like
Wikipedia.
I don't know what's real. Do you really have 5 names?
Do I have 5 names?
Yes. So
If he does, that's a record. If
It
he
might
does,
be. It might be.
Yeah.
So
No,
your full name is
Francis Eugene, and then my confirmation name is John, and then Mullen.
okay.
And then Junior, if you want to add the Junior on at the end,
Okay, because
that would be 5.
I've seen a Francis P. Mull Eugene Mullen. Is that just pure
No.
garbage?
No,
I
there was never any P,
But
there was an E for Eugene. So.
I can't call you P. Mull. So that one's false.
Yes. Yep.
That's classic.
I just had to ask. I looked at it and I was like, what the
You went there, yeah.
dude's got 5 names.
Yeah, no, not 5. No. So
one other question I had for you is I've got 2 daughters.
Yep.
Younger than yours. They're 16 and 14. But
okay,
I know
mine's 32.
Yeah, and she's into music.
Okay.
Right. So your daughter, is she a musician?
She's not a music. I mean, she loves music.
Mhm.
But she's more like she was more into like the mainstream dance type music or whatever. She did get into some heavy bands when she was little. I used to put her in the back of the car and I'd be listening to Clutch, and she'd be, pounding her fist along the way, whatever it feels right. Dodge Swinger 19s.
So does she live in your vicinity? Is she somewhere else in the country? Or?
No, she lives in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
right now. And, yeah, I mean, she's doing good. And, but yeah, she always loved to like sing and do all that kind of stuff. She put on little shows in the backyard when she was younger and all that. But yeah, she does love music. Unfortunately, she never got, into anything playing, instruments or anything like that.
I think kids either like my kids now they like music, but I went through the role where I bought them a guitar. That didn't do shit. Bought him a drum set. No, that didn't do shit. And then, I bought his keyboards and it was like, okay. My oldest daughter did that for about 6 months and she's like, nah, but it's like, you kind of hope to pass that on, but it's like music. Especially in this, and I'd say like my kids' generation and maybe even that gap between them and me, picking up an instrument is a lost art.
Definitely.
Yeah, right. It's a lost art, and also like you have to want to play that instrument. Like I remember growing up, my sister took piano lessons, and then they tried making me take piano lessons. I was like, I hated it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and my dad was a trumpet player, and then he was, you should try out trumpet, no, like I wanted to learn guitar, so I learned guitar. Like if you pretty much if you're gonna stick with an instrument, you have to want it. Like my sister became really good on the piano, so she can still play. She doesn't play all the time or anything like that, but um, yeah, I think with kids and stuff, and I mean, yeah, there's probably not as much of a focus on you know the kids being like, yeah, I want to do this, or I want to,
Right. So, like, do you see much activity in your area with younger bands at all, or is it a little
I
dry?
mean, yeah, there's a couple like younger bands out here and stuff that I'll see, local shows, things like that. Um, yeah, they're all taking the influences that they've heard from the bands that they grew up on. So um, the main thing out here now that no matter where you go, there's so many bands out there that play cover stuff.
That
They're
is
like
coming back,
cover
I've
bands.
noticed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that became huge and popular. Like we have a band here that does Slayer, and they do strictly Slayer, and they're good.
Right.
I mean, and you're like, wow, all right, that's cool.
Yeah. I think it's entertaining to watch for me. Like, you can go check it out one time and whatever, but I could
Yeah.
never ever put myself in a band like that. I don't think I could do it.
You really have to
No,
want to do something like that. Yeah,
Uh,
you really got
like
to want to
playing
do something
somebody
like that.
else's stuff always just feels so awkward. Like, we've done a couple covers and stuff
yeah,
like that, but it's like, even that feels weird. So, and I don't know
yeah,
that we ever
yeah.
have live. I don't know. I don't think so. No,
Interesting. Yeah.
no,
Interesting.
Bill shaking his head. No way.
And then, Frank, I also kind of have a separate question, although sort of like true or false, but not necessarily like Wikipedia either. But so, is it true that you're an actor as well?
I've done some stuff. Yes,
You
I've
have.
done
Okay.
some. Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, basically, uh, the whole COVID thing like ruined everything. You know,
Yes, it
um,
did.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yep.
like you couldn't do acting unless if you had the shot, or if you did this, like you couldn't do that anymore. You had to show 'em proof of that. I was supposed to go do a European run to say goodbye to everybody, over in Europe. And of course, it happened right in the middle of the pandemic, and
Ugh.
nobody could play shows for 2 years. And so by the time it came around, I was like, like I can't do it now.
Mhm.
Like I was ready to, do that right after the U.S. tour. But no. So a friend of mine out here, James Balsamo, he does Acid Bath Productions. I've done a bunch of different movies with him. He gets cameos from all over the place. I mean, I don't know how he does it, but like he'll go to anywhere, and he'll get like Eric Roberts to do 5 minutes in a movie for him. He'll get wrestlers. He'll get other musicians. Like it's nuts. All the people that he gets to jump in on these films or whatever. But they're low budget films and everything. So I've done that, and then I've done some backgrounds acting for like TV shows and stuff like that. So there's actually an episode of The Blacklist. I don't know if you know that
I
show.
do.
And so there's an episode where the one guy, like he's getting into like a skinhead gang type thing, and
Mhm.
the leader of the skinheads is that guy who was like, "Warriors, come
Oh,
out and
yeah,
play."
yeah.
Like he's the lead guy. So it was me and two other guys that they picked to be like, the skinheads right behind him or whatever. So I did that. So like that is the one you can actually see me on TV.
All right, I'm gonna have to go track it down.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to get back into it at some point. You know, now that the world's kind of getting back to normal or whatever, you know, maybe I'll start dipping my foot in there or whatever, and looking for some roles. And yeah, you never know.
Right, right.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, I think I've kind of hit my list on
Mhm.
things and whatnot, man. It's been a
Excellent.
pleasure.
Yeah, this
has
is
been
cool.
You know, I can't thank you enough for taking the
Thank
time
you,
to
Frank.
sit down
Yeah,
with
for sure,
us.
man.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck on your show, and may continue and continue growing for you guys.
All right, brother. Well, you take care
Thank
of
you,
yourself.
Frank. Appreciate it, bro.
All right, stay brutal.
You
All
too, my
right.
friend.
All right, buddy. Take it easy.
Yep. Take care. Later.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Growl Podcast. If you enjoy this type of content, please subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, hit that like button, share it on your social media, and help spread the word of the Growl.